Thank you very much indeed for having me for this incredible group and opportunity to talk about something which is very important, the education of character in universities. Professor Breeze, thank you very much, Professor Montoro, for this opportunity to join you, your remarkable campus here. Professor Martin and Miguel Arafat, thank you very much indeed, and others who've been involved in lots of ways organising. It is a pleasure and privilege to be here. The Oxford Character Project. I'm not sure quite how the title came into being for this talk, but there it was, and I thought, oh, maybe that's a little bit negative, challenges of the Oxford Character Project. But I thought, well, actually, no, that's probably quite right. But maybe we could first push into understanding challenges a little bit and why this could be a good title. And then I've got 5 challenges to talk about. And what I'd like to do is say a little bit about what we've done in Oxford over the last few years. The Oxford Character Project, which I direct at the University of Oxford, has been going since 2014. And I'd like to talk a little bit through what we've been doing by way of illustration of one approach, one activity, one initiative to further character education in a university context. It is tremendous to be talking to you here as you're on the kind of precipice, the cusp of opportunity with UNIR and the University of Navarra with your own character project, and I'm very excited to hear more and to learn as you learn from you and with you. But here I'll work in Oxford. But first then challenges. And I want to put challenges in the context of 2 other themes, change and opportunity. And here I draw on this, I think this is an excellent book by Derek Bock, former famous president of Harvard, of course, and came out just last year talking about education in the higher education in the 21st century. And these 3 themes come through strongly. So the context, the reason why we're talking even about new initiatives, new opportunities, new challenges in higher education is because of the context we're in late modernity, with the change that's gone with it. So this radical interconnection of intertwined global interests. And it was remarkable, wasn't it, when that tanker got shoved sideways in the Suez Canal and global trade stops and supply chains, and you kind of start to realize how interconnected the world is. Of course, with information, the connection is there so quickly as well, and a knowledge-driven economy. You're familiar with these ideas of change. There are many more themes too. But with these changes has come certain challenges, and Bock pulls 3 challenges out particularly as headings in the book: of division, of disorientation, of distrust. Of, yes, massive connection, but also of people who are disconnected from that globalized world and societies that are increasingly divided. Ours is in the UK, as you know. Of people, individuals who are disoriented as the world suddenly is accelerated fast, and of a lack of trust between different parties. So certain challenges. But then opportunities. In this context, and we can only live in our context, what are we called to do? And what are we called to do as university educators? And the vision of the book, which has a whole chapter devoted to character, is tremendous. The point is made that universities educate a large proportion of young people at a crucial stage of their development, of course. And so university educators have a wonderful opportunity to help develop this next generation, to develop character, to put down deep foundations for a flourishing life, and to help students to contribute through their lives and careers to the flourishing of society. So yes, challenges, but challenges because of great changes and that present us with opportunities to push into, to step forward into, and to see if we can further university education into this new chapter. So 5 challenges, and here the first challenge I'd like to talk about with regards to our work then at the Oxford Character Project and perhaps more generally for character education in universities. And this was the challenge that was put to us as we started a talk to different faculty around the University of Oxford about this idea of character education, of a new character initiative. And it really was a project that came out of lots of these conversations and a growing sense that things have been changing in the university, that the university had given itself previously to educate holistically and educate character of students, but wasn't doing so, wasn't able to do so, perhaps, in the present moment, but needed to. And of course it needed to because of this question. And the point goes more widely, but the point was made, well, look, here's this University of Oxford that produces and talks a lot about producing thinkers and leaders who go off and serve around the world in different ways. But of course, that's no good in and of itself. It's only good if they are wise thinkers and good leaders. And that was called into question by various crises across different sectors of British society. Not least the financial crisis of 2008, where many senior leaders in the financial services sector obviously came from universities such as ours, but certain other crises as well of leadership across politics, public, private sector, media. You can carry on. And this isn't just the UK, of course, similar situations in different parts of the world. So what can universities do, and how can we produce wise thinkers and good leaders? That's the challenge. And so this is a connection between character and leadership. Leadership, the kind of aspiration, the future, where students will go on and the impact they'll have. That's what it stands for as we think about it. Character being what's needed to turn leadership from an apparent good to an actual good as it lands in the world. So what's the opportunity? Well, here was the opportunity then, an opportunity for character and leadership development. Could we push into this challenge in the university? And could we do two things, we thought? Well, could we do some research to understand what it means in this day and age to develop character in modern institutions such as ours, and develop programs alongside it? And so we pushed into those two things from 2014 with some research to understand character, and with a global leadership initiative made up of small groups, cohorts of students, around 15 to 20 at a time, from all around the world, postgraduate students who we took through a 7-month leadership program. I should say as this research progressed, I'll come back to that just in a second. Actually, I'll come back to the research just now. Let's talk first about challenge 2. Challenge 2, which as soon as we started, isn't far then from the top of the kind of agenda, if you like, of things we need to address. Challenge 2 is the challenge of skepticism and these important questions. Okay, it's all very well thinking you might want to do some research and develop some programs for character, but should this be done, and can it be possible in any case? It's the challenge of skepticism. And here the challenges are conceptual and practical. They're conceptual, relating to kind of the possibility of plural communities of consistent, coherent character formation. They're conceptual in terms of what virtue is and what character is, and whether we can trust and reliably cultivate something which is called character. And you'll be aware of a significant amount of pushback from a situationism in psychology, Doris and others, who are very skeptical about this idea of consistent, stable global traits. Should we and can we then? Can we do it practically? What are the possibilities? So we pushed into that as an opportunity then for research. Should it be done? Can it be done? Well, let's think about it. And so what did we do? We went away and did some work. And this was really in 3 areas. Some work on character development in higher education. And here we did some work thinking about, well, what are some practical pedagogical methodologies, looking back through how has character been developed over time. And we pulled together 7 strategies for character education, particularly for postgraduates, as we were thinking about it, but I'll come to the strategies in a moment. They're broadly applicable, and you'll recognise them from their provenance. We pushed into a work bringing together others around the world doing similar things, hosted a conference in 2017, actually the edited volume of which is still yet to come out, but still will be, it's now in press, it will be with us next year. We drew on others. And there's some excellent work going on in character development in higher education in different places, not least Wake Forest, who we partnered with to develop this conference in 2017. Christian Miller actually had a character project before ours. His was the first, and he came across, and we learned from what they'd been doing. Nathan Hatch, the former president now of Wake Forest, was very supportive, and to develop a character as an institutional aim through the university. So they came across, and we drew others in as well for a remarkable conference, and that will come out soon. We pushed into character, ideas around character and leadership. and did some work on how these themes might relate and how a leadership program could develop character, designing and then measuring it with mixed methods, empirical studies. Pre-post, controlled, small numbers because we only had small groups, but we did our best to do this as kind of systematically and rigorously as we could with a mixed methods longitudinal study with similar kind of control groups from similar groups of students that applied to our programs, so shared the same kind of motivation at the outset, and we published that in the Journal of Moral Education. I think that came out last year. That was just the first phase of our research. And through this research, we're finding that, universities should cultivate virtue. In fact, they do. Universities, like all institutions, shape the people who are part of them. We're shaped by the people around us, by the narratives of the organisations we live within, by pressures, by physical spaces. All of these things shape people. And so we argue, and I think following some great work by Elizabeth Quiche a few years ago, who made the same point, have pushed into this, and this is a paper, a chapter, which lists out why the reasons why we think universities should cultivate virtue, which we've drawn together. The first four here are from Christian Miller. The kind of overall heading is because character is intrinsic to flourishing. And so the development of character is what helps students to flourish. It's a central component, I would argue, of a flourishing life. And it helps and develops flourishing societies. But 8 reasons. Student aspirations. Students find virtuous lives inspiring, and certainly as we've talked to students, there's been an immediate connection at the student level with students who are very eager to join our programs. We started off with a whole bunch of breakfast events, just meeting students to ask about their ideas of character and leadership when we started off back in 2014. And very evidently, very quickly, it was evident that there were many more students who were interested to join the programs we were developing than we had capacity for. And they were oversubscribed from the outset by kind of 5 or 6 to 1, even for long extracurricular and quite intense programs where there was a fair amount of commitment involved. So students are keen to think about who they are, who they're becoming, what the kinds of structure that could be around them. I guess if they haven't been given some of that already, where are the resources? They're not familiar with these. And certainly we found it was, if we could speak in the right way, open up the right kind of conversation, not go in telling students what to do, certainly go in with an aspirational rather than a remedial idea of character and leadership, there was a great openness and opportunity. Of course, there's a public good. Virtuous lives aren't just good for individuals to flourish, but make the world a better place. You saw that was central to the motivation from the outset. Personal benefit. Good character can be personally rewarding. Religious faith also is an important factor. Of course, many universities have a kind of institutional secularity. Certainly Oxford professes that somewhat these days. But many students do have their own religious faith, and of course around the world, many religious students do have these religious convictions which support cultivating virtue and encourage it. To Miller's 4 reasons, we added 4 more. The importance of the psychological and social development at emerging in the life stage of emerging adulthood, and here the work of Jeffrey Arnett. So this is a crucial time for character development, and there's been some recent work which supports that, just even in terms of the kind of neuroscience of brain development and so forth, that into the early 20s, this is a key time for personal development. For good citizenship, flourishing political communities need leaders and citizens who exercise virtue. For academic development and integrity, of course, character supports the practices and patterns of academic life, and for professional preparation and progression as well. So should universities, and we pushed into this question a bit. And here are the 7 strategies I mentioned. How can universities cultivate character? Well, we, from a review of literature and of methods to develop character over time, and looking to the ones that have been validated with recent research, drew together 7 strategies, 7 methods for character development, which we then integrated in our student programs. And the paper for that actually was written quite a long time ago, but that actually came out, the paper, just this year. But the 7, they're, as you can see them written, fairly straightforward. So habituation through practice. And here the idea is that we are what we repeatedly do. It's the kind of classical Aristotelian idea. How do you how do you become just? By doing just actions, and the analogue with the harpist or the builder who grows by practice. And so the same in character, by doing just actions, or courageous, by doing courageous things. So habituation through practice and learning, and including that into programs, helping students to habituate character virtues. Reflection on personal experience. So reflection's important in order to learn adequately from experience, and there's a reciprocity of reflection and action, of course, and because character virtues aren't simply automatic but rational, there needs to be this kind of reflective, properly reflective component through these stages to develop a kind of goal-dependent automaticity. And so we help students to learn to reflect well on their personal experience, collectively and individually. Engagement with virtuous exemplars, the mimetic quality, and there's some excellent recent research and exemplarity in moral education. Linda Zagzewski's work and theory has really got the ball rolling in terms of the philosophical discussion, and there's a good degree of empirical work as well on the kinds of exemplars that are most relevant for character development. So inspiring, proximate, people who are kind of close in the orbit, whose narratives overlap, relevant, that is, and attainable. Not perfect, but on the way, if you like. And we help students to engage with virtuous exemplars, identifying them, thinking about them, meeting them perhaps, giving them exercises to think about how they could learn from others around them. Dialogue that increases virtue literacy. So terminology opens up possibility. We spoke a little of this yesterday as a group of us gathered together. And so we help students to grow their virtue literacy by introducing important concepts and helping them to thicken out their understanding of them. I should say we don't go in and deliver a course on philosophical course in the leadership programs that we run. In moral theory and virtue ethics, we try to introduce enough of the theory to support the developmental goals. So we're open and upfront with students about where the theory is coming from, but we make the theory kind of subsumed underneath the ongoing aims of personal development, and give students then access and opportunity to explore more if they'd like to. So here, for example, we might include, or might start, and we take a method where it's very Socratic and dialogical. We'll introduce character virtues for discussion, where there's some kind of thin consensus of the importance of a character virtue. And we might, for example, take gratitude here as one character virtue to introduce and to improve virtue literacy. We'd take gratitude and we would start to explore with the help of various readings which we'd recruit to the discussion, and give students a reading pack which they could take away for an hour before, with readings from opinion pieces in literature, poetry, and so forth. And then in a facilitated discussion, we would start with understandings of gratitude that exist and its importance and relevance to leadership, and then deepen and problematize simplistic understandings. And with a diverse group of students from around the world, we're helping everybody in the room to be able to learn and grow and express their understandings in a way which enables the disagreements to take place well, and fostering an atmosphere which has, I think, the kind of right kind of psychological safety, where students can feel free to say things that they aren't quite sure of, but positions they feel they hold, and to be challenged, to challenge others, is something we've tried to foster. And that kind of dialogue can increase virtue literacy. Awareness of situational variables. Here, the idea is that, of course, the situationist critique isn't without any grounds at all. There are important situational variables and ways we're shaped by our context, but being aware of those can help to mitigate their detrimental effects. And so being aware of the pressures that are around us, the kinds of ways that institutions shape by incentives and so forth, can help to mitigate their negative effects. Moral reminders, that's reminders of commitments to self or commitments to others, building those through a program. So not just introducing an idea and leaving it, but developing it over time, and reminding students or helping them to remind themselves in relevant ways of their own commitments and convictions. And finally, friendships of mutual accountability. And others here have done more work on friendship than I have, but we pushed into this idea of different kinds of friendship that Aristotle talks about, and of three kinds: friends of utility, like business connections perhaps, of pleasure, where there's a shared interest, and friends of virtue, where the interest is in the good and the flourishing of the other. And it's these third kinds, helping students to develop, thinking all these kinds of friendships have their place, but how can students develop friendships of mutual accountability, of virtue, where they're helping each other to grow and to develop. Simple strategies, which we then integrated into all of our programming in different kinds of ways. And we've done that consistently since we developed this first. Michael Lamb led on the project. He was our first postdoc, who's now in Wake Forest, back in 2014. I think we want to challenge 3, so the thing's wrong, but the challenge of scale is the next challenge I want to raise. So we were going through, this is 2014 to 17, having a wonderful time with these kinds of small groups. And I said, this is half of them, 15 to 20 or so in a cohort each year. But thinking this is wonderful, and here we bring in wonderful guest speakers. That's Nan Cohen sitting there in the middle, a famous political theorist. And she came, we have a breakfast with Nan Cohen, who's written on leadership, who's an incredible political theorist, who's led herself at the higher education level. And we were enjoying this, appreciating it, and students were getting a lot from it, but it was one small group of students. How are we going to see this grow and scale? So we pushed into partnership, of course, and this is one way I'm so delighted to be here as you're thinking and talking together at the University of Navarra and UNIR about the kinds of partnerships that will need to be made and developed. And we're very aware of this in Oxford, that we exist in a kind of ecosystem where many people in different contexts are doing brilliant work to develop character in higher education. And we need to learn and partner, and would love to learn and partner with you as well. And that's what we've been trying to do then as we went on into our second phase, if you like. We've gone these kind of 3-year funding rounds with the wonderful support of the John Templeton Foundation and Templeton World Charity Foundation. And from 2017 then we pushed into partnership. And a few different ways we've done that, and I'll mention some of them, and these works then have carried on. So we had some connections with Hong Kong University and some colleagues there in the social sciences division. We're very interested to see if they could develop a character of leadership initiative at the University of Hong Kong. And so we went over for a couple of years. I think this was the third time, 27, 18 and 19. This was the third one in 2019. Each time they were the social sciences and these colleagues in Hong Kong were taking more and more responsibility for the program. We got the Central University involved, and they gave us some funding to do some research around it. But it was a 2-day. We ran a 2-day kind of character of leadership forum, and then developed with them an online module which students then could work through. And this is now wonderfully taken off. And I think I mentioned yesterday, this weekend, the University of Hong Kong launching their own Leading for Life program and project, which now has funding from the university and a wonderful horizon. And we'll look forward to learning from them. They're doing some more research around it as well. We've worked with European universities, and there's a European group, which has a scholars program of DPhil PhD students from around Europe. They were eager to see if they could introduce character into their program. So we worked with them to help them to do that, thinking about leading for the public good, virtues particularly relating to collaboration and pressures, and develop for them some half-day workshops they could run with students. We worked with the LSE in London. They have a wonderful centre called LSE Life, which is just brilliant, isn't it? As a centre for the university, they put this at the heart of their building in London there, just off. Close to the Strand, and cleared out some old space of their library. Claudine Promencher heads it up with a brilliant team. They run all kinds of different kinds of student training and engagement and support initiatives, and we're eager to push into character and leadership. So we've been supporting them again. They're taking this off now internally as well. We developed some work particularly for business and business schools. Just Business was a program we developed, and some sessions you can see we ran in 2020, last year, on values, purpose, character. We ran workshops for MBA students, for entrepreneurs, and others. We did some work with schools, helping a new schools initiative to take off. And there's a research centre at Eton College, who was eager to invest in character education, so we helped them to develop an offering for their students, but also for a school in East London, in Stratford, and a partner project which brought together students from very different backgrounds to be part of a shared character and leadership programme, which ran as well over 7 months. We also brought them up to Oxford and got our Oxford students then, who have been part of our programme, teaching the facilitating sessions for the students in the schools. We took them off to the Houses of Parliament and had various different guest speakers. One of our Olympian rowers is there in the top right, speaking to the group. And we've wonderfully had the opportunity to partner with the Human Flourishing Programme at Harvard, which you'll hear more about in a moment, and through the lockdown developed an online course, which we've been excited to see has been taken up widely, and we're looking to redevelop and expand into our next phase as well. So some of the things we've growing through partnerships. We can't do everything on our own. No one can. We've got lots to learn and connect. So how can we push into partnerships together? Challenge 4, then, and one more after this. Challenge 4, the challenge of situational pressures. And this is a picture, as you can see, of a square watermelon. Now, I don't know if you've ever come across this phenomenon, but in parts of the world, square watermelons are grown. And these can be grown. How do you imagine a square watermelon might be grown? Exactly, it's grown in a box. Yeah, you put a frame around it, and as it grows, it fills out the frame, and very good for stacking, and much easier to transport. I'm not sure what they taste like. Some friends tell me I think you can get these in East Asia. Some friends tell me that they're okay, but I still would rather the round one. But the point is that as institutions, as we live into institutions, we grow and take the shape of them. Michael Lewis, the famous financial journalist, talks about occupational hazards and the occupational hazards of working on Wall Street in an important article in Bloomberg a few years ago, which we share with our students as a reading. But the idea is that students, as they go on, it's lovely to think we can, they're at Oxford in this wonderful environment with different people coming through, you could speak to them over breakfast, and we could bring them to our home and have wonderful discussions. We could meet in seminar rooms and talk about and develop virtue literacy. We'd help them develop these positive friendships in safe psychological spaces. But at the end of our programme, what happens? They scatter to the winds, different parts of the world. They work in banks, in law firms, in government offices and departments, setting up different companies and initiatives in non-profits. All of those contexts exist already. They have their frames around them, and they exert a shaping effect. What about situational pressures? Well, here we then pushed in and thought, well, okay, we're preparing students for the world, for these different situations. Our programs end when they leave at the moment, and our understanding really does as well. And so we thought, well, look, here's an opportunity for industry research. We need to understand the context our students are going into in order to think about how we could develop them. And maybe by doing that, we could also help think about how character could be better developed in these contexts themselves as well. And so with the help of the John Templeton Foundation, last year we started a new project looking at character, culture, and leadership development in 4 business sectors: in finance, in tech, in law, and some other business sectors more widely. We have 20 partner organisations from top banks and building societies, law firms and tech firms, all UK-based, to very small companies as well. And the idea here is to understand, working with these partners, quite how character is important in these contexts, what character virtues are important, how they can be developed, and then thinking about, okay, well, how can we use that understanding to help those companies themselves and to help students who are going into them. And some discrete parts. We started again with this idea of, these are our questions. How can values and character strengths, what values and character strengths are most important? What's the role of character for good leadership? And certainly this idea of what good leadership is has opened up remarkably through COVID-19. How's character developed in professional education? Has it influenced by ecosystems, moral and intellectual ecosystems in organisations, cultures, if you like? But we wanted to use ecosystem rather than culture because culture doesn't necessarily, or sometimes is put against ideas about strategy or physical space and so forth. And actually everything in a company, all of these ideas come and fit together and develop and build people. So what are the ecosystems that help people develop morally and intellectually? And we're collecting data at the moment in different parts. We started with this kind of touch points exercise in the bottom right, developing a values map, so looking at 220 UK firms, their own statements, websites and company reports, trying to understand what their values and purpose are, how they understand them, what they take them to be, how they develop those ideas in the first place, how they embed values and purpose in organisations. The idea being we want to help companies to move from values to virtues as the muscles that can help values and purpose to be put into practice. But we need a touch point. Where are things at the moment? And we're following that with a qual project. So we're doing 160 interviews with people at different levels in these organisations, from the chair of a massive bank and other people in executive committees in different roles, down to new graduates in these firms as well, trying to understand, well, how is character important? How are values and purpose embedded? How is character important within these places? We've got a prototype analysis, a layered survey of good leadership. Again, another kind of touch point exercise to find out just where things are at the moment, to think about how we could help them to move forward. We'll develop a survey as the next, as we've done after the qualitative work, to understand these different aspects of organisational culture most salient for character development. And a 10-year study, a longitudinal study, following students from education through their early career, thinking about how these situational pressures actually influence them and how we could help to them to live well and to continue the growth that maybe they've started through their university or before. This is the in the middle here as well, I should say, the 10 years into industry, but we're continuing our work to measure empirically character development with pre-post studies, longitudinal control ones of specific programs, and we're starting to do some work experimenting with machine learning, text analysis with the Oxford Internet Institute, and Grant Blank particularly is helping us there. Finally then, challenge number 5, and this is the last one, is the challenge that we're living right through, which is the challenge of not all being here in person, although it's lovely if you have joined online. It's wonderful that you're able to, and thank you for doing that. But the final challenge of COVID, and what's this meant? Well, over the last year, we were all thrown on our heels in higher education. And different people in different places in slightly different ways. I understand students remained at the University of Navarra, whereas ours in Oxford was entirely online. I think many institutions in the US were as well. But here, an opportunity to develop then hybrid learning. This is how we pushed into the challenge of COVID. The online program came out of this. We had to put our cohort-based program entirely online for a year, so we were able to see, well, how could we develop cohorts and the kinds of conversation that would work so well offline in the online space. And we developed a hybrid program called the Global Leadership Challenge in conjunction with the St. Gallen Symposium that's based at the University of St. Gallen, and for 50 years has brought together a kind of intergenerational leadership discourse around important themes. And here the idea is to help in a key challenging time, as people are thinking about resetting. How about the next generation of leaders coming through from around the world? How might they be able to push into some of the issues today in a program which engages important challenges, which we connected to the Sustainable Development Goals, but also helps them to develop as the kinds of people, the kinds of leaders who will be able to consistently engage such challenges through their careers. So we joined together this idea of character and responsible leadership development through a week-long program with the groups of students working together to develop proposals for specific challenge streams. This year we've got 5, so we'll push into ideas around education, health and well-being, gender equality, climate action, the nature of work, and as I said, these different components, cultivating character and leadership, intergenerational and global dialogues, because students will join this program, some in person in Oxford, some in person in St. Gallen, others dialing in from all around the world. Even the Oxford St. Gallen cohorts will be international, but those other students will come in and will take part virtually, and guest speakers will be drawn from people who are practicing in these different practitioners in these different fields with relevant experience, senior leaders, people on the ground who will be able to connect with the students as they go, giving them some help as they think about how they can develop their ideas. all about connecting, again, partners, and this is really the hybrid possibility here, to engage different dimensions of education. And if the challenges that we face are not simply for one place and time, but are global, how can we make the most of the new technologies that we have to start to connect, to engage them? And we've tried to do that with different kinds of networks coming together and using hybrid in that way. That's a whistle-stop tour of some of the things we've been doing. I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to share with you. Thank you very, very much indeed.